Welcome back to East Haven County, where we are still battling a huge impending population exodus and making sure the game is paused. Because if I let the city run for 5 in-game minutes, thousands of homeless people will have packed up and left the county, unable to find affordable housing. So in the previous video, we were hard at work building more housing, adding a total of 2,500 new residential units, 720 of those being affordable and rent controlled. And while unemployment isn't too bad at around 7%, there's very few open positions, so as we continue to build more housing for our homeless population, we have to keep a close eye on the labor market. Now, we're not gonna stress about resettling every homeless individual in the county, as that would require some grand Soviet-style public housing complexes. But we're at the very least going to continue where we left off, adding even more residential expansions, and as always, you guys have made it a little easier for me by providing some wonderful feedback and suggestions. Checking Sim census, we're sitting at 8,800 homeless people. And we're just gonna jump straight into some new low-rent development by actually starting with the renaming of Chestnut Terrace. As always, I want to thank you guys for an abundance of awesome suggestions, but eventually I think we're gonna go for this one, renaming it Roosevelt Heights. President Roosevelt signed 2 National Housing Acts into law, and while there are some issues, oh man, they actually did add some affordable housing to the US housing stock. And in that context, this reply to the suggestion makes all the more sense. So we should probably get some more public housing within Roosevelt Heights. Now, out of the current 950-ish households or units here in Roosevelt Heights, around 300 or 320 of them are public housing or low rent affordable housing in the form of these 7 towers. So it's not too bad of a ratio, but I do agree that if we could reach at least half of Roosevelt Heights being actual public housing affordable units, it would be more fitting for the name. We do have a bit of empty space, but it's definitely not all that development friendly given the steep cliffside here. So we're probably gonna have to put down another road, and we're gonna have some pretty dramatic terrain, although I kind of see 3 options. We have this narrow stretch of land here, which has some very dramatic topography, and it's facing what is in-game, it's a highway, but it's more like a big expressway in the city, because we don't really treat it as a highway. Then we have this area here, where we could place some buildings to Sunnyside Street. That would be fairly easy, although the geography is once again a little dramatic. And then we've got a bit of an area down here where maybe we could remove a few of the existing row houses and add in a high density development here. Although it's very weird to remove housing in an episode like this, but I mean, for the greater good, right? I mean, it would be very President Roosevelt-like, because it did say that we had to remove some housing to build some new one because we don't want to be accused of socialism. So let's see, if we start over here, that's probably the low-hanging fruit to just kind of grab. So let's jump into some low rent options. As always, I want to place these manually, so I'm using Find It in combination with the Plop the Growables mod, so that the buildings will actually function when I just manually place them without zoning them. I don't do this for everything at all in the city here, but when I want to have a little more control, I use this. And for many of these public housing projects, I want to create like a uniform, singular look, because many of these projects, as the name implies, were built by a single developer, maybe even the federal government or local municipalities. Anyways, let's turn the density to high, and we'll search for low so that we filter out the high density stuff that isn't low rent. And to narrow down or search a little more, we are gonna make sure that the sizes of the lots aren't too deep, because if they're too deep, we're gonna cut too much into the the hillside here, and it's gonna look a little weird. So if we could restrict ourselves to 4 and preferentially go even lower, But let's just see what we can actually find here. If possible, I want a bit of parking as well. So these are the ones we've already used up here. They're just in a slightly taller version and with some surface level parking. So they could actually be decent potential fits here because, you know, that's gonna tie it all together in a single theme. But I am going to do something terrible here and remove a bit of the zone stuff. Oh well, it's all for the greater good. And this one is even taller, I think. So we've got a couple of versions here to play with. So I think we're just gonna disable snapping, make sure we have... Actually, do we need... Yeah, we need to have Anarchy on to place these as I wish. And then I'm going to place one right about here. I probably don't need to disable snapping because I'm pretty much just snapping to the road. We're immediately going to drop down to this one here, which is the same model, but it's not as tall, which I just find that makes it a lot more interesting. We'll add one of these, and then we'll move back up to the tall version. And as you guys can see there, the smaller version is a little closer to the road, so we're gonna kind of continue that trend. I didn't mean for that, it just happened. So we're just gonna go with the flow and continue that trend and move the slightly taller version a little back. And then we'll grab a smaller version and move that forward. We could decide to go with the same drab color scheme that we have for these, but man, that is just rough to look at. So I'm gonna see if we can grab something that is maybe a little more interesting, such as this, and kind of just break up the development a little bit by actually having a different color scheme. And this should already be a pretty noticeable change because these taller versions have significantly more units than the shorter ones, which is very nice. So we're gonna move on after this quick and dirty job. I just want to do a little sanity check to see how the parking stuff is looking in here, and generally it's behaving quite all right, although it seems like this building might be at a bit of a too high elevation for the actual placement. So if I just drop that down a little bit, the parking lot kind of flatted out, it seems, and we can do the very same thing here, I think. Don't mind the reappearing bushes and trees, that's just me being stupid. I'll make sure to clean it up. And then I just want to wrap up with two quick tweaks. So first up, I'm going to grab this road here and I'm just going to add an additional node by adding a new segment to it. It's not going to serve any other purpose than to add a new node right here. Then we're going to grab our advanced road tooling and we're going to turn this side here into a key so that the landscape here or the crazy topography doesn't mess up the parking lot. And we should be able to remove that again. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna smoothen out the hillside here just a little bit. I don't really mind this look because it looks like they've kind of dug into the cliffside to make room for the housing, which is perfectly normal and realistic. But I do like to make it look a little less dramatic. So the way I do it is I kind of just right click here to flatten the terrain to the height of the buildings here. And then I move in with the soften terrain tool and I make sure to not overlay the parking lots here. And then I just kind of smoothen it out a little bit. This might actually just be a bit much. Makes it a little more boring to look at, I guess. I guess that kind of works. I've decided this hillside here is a haven for people that love apple trees. Yeah, so I'm just gonna lower them slightly into the ground so that they resemble large bushes more than actual trees, and then I'm just gonna cover up the hillside for some quick and dirty detailing. If my elementary math serves me all right, then about half of the district is now public housing, so I guess we've kind of achieved the goal by now and don't really have to develop this tricky cliffside. Although I do wonder if we could still fit in a more fitting housing tower here in this corner lot. Why not? It's all in a good cause. So I just gonna see what kind of height I want out here. This one is probably a little too dramatic. So if I go for something like this, it even has a bit of surface parking. Yeah, I'm removing more housing. I know. Let's see. A bit of manual alignment. A click or two. Just seeing if everything lines up fine. It does. There's a bit of a path cutting through here that I already placed, but I don't really mind. I don't think that's gonna mess anything up. Just quickly going to upgrade the path here to the asphalt version. And then I've renamed it Roosevelt Tower. So if you ever find yourself tuning into one of the local hip-hop radio stations here in East Haven County, you'll probably hear this tower referenced quite a bit.
Look, check how we moving with division in mind. I'm low side with my on division with slime. Been making plays, I'm finna dish 'em a dime.
I'm starting to look forward to hitting play and seeing the immediate effects on our homeless population, because low rent units especially will be grabbed by homeless people at a very high percentage, and makes a ton of sense. But we need to add more, that's for sure, and I'm gonna highlight this comment, more specifically the part where it's suggested that we maybe move on to some of the other areas and cities here in East Haven County to add some medium density, some low rent housing and other good stuff. So we've moved over to Chowda Bay, where we have a bit of low rent housing kind of sprinkled across the inner city area, and then we have 2 public housing projects. Staying in the hip-hop or rap theme, we have a Nas Hill nestled in between lots of highway infrastructure. What a wonderful place to place some public housing, I guess. And then we have Riverview Heights out here, which is a bit of a mixed district with a bit of commercial activity and even a bit of light industry. But more noticeably, we also have the Riverview Towers here, which are these 4 public housing towers. And I think we can expand this area. There's a pretty quick drop off from these towers to some pretty large low density single family housing lots. And I don't really think that's all that fitting. So I'm going to be a bit of a crime writer again and remove a bunch of housing. But I mean, these people, they can buy property somewhere else, I guess. And then I think, to just keep it simple, I'm just gonna grab the very same tower here. And this time around, I don't need any fancy placement without snapping, because they should fit in quite nicely here. And get a few more placed over here. Yoink. And then I used the regular vanilla pathway here just to kind of connect them up and make it look like a single development. So we're gonna do the very same thing right over here. And for the color scheme, I think I'll grab one of these boring brown, light brown colors, and we'll just paint that throughout. Super simple detailing with some of these all new tiny parks from the second detailers patch. Maybe even this urban pocket park. Yoink. Adding a few dining options, and there's already like a small street market here, so it's not too bad of a place actually. And I'll just add in a few trees. And I've grabbed the linden because that's kind of a theme out here. I think we can up the density just a little more out here. I'm going to clean out this block here, and then we'll add in, let's see, the parking alley with parking on either side. Just to cross through here and add a bit of street parking. And then I'll see if I can use some of the row houses to make like a what could look like a small public housing project. I'm not really sure how that's gonna work out. Let's see, they can't be too deep size wise. They can't be too fancy looking. Maybe this European one is actually a good bet. How are the US style looking? This one look a little older, I think. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and try and grab these, just the level 1s, I think. Just gonna freeform place these, I think. And they all need to have the completely same color scheme for this to make any sort of sense, I think. around back here. So we'll go with this small narrow one. I'll have Anarchy on so I don't mess up any of the houses here. And we'll just add in a few of these paths and then a few bushes and trees and call it a day. Very, very simple, but it should provide quite a bit more density than the 5 or 6 low density houses that used to sit here. It's a little chaotic, I guess, but I actually kind of like it. I haven't used row houses like this before, and I do think it works. A bit of an odd design, but I think from afar it looks fairly realistic, and we have to work with what we've got. Anyways, let's move on to West Point. Now, this is a city we haven't visited in a long time. I can't even remember when I did some development out here. What I think I want to do is maybe just a bit of general expansion, because the, let's say, inner core of West Point ends quite abruptly here by the train tracks. And then we have like a small commercial area that crosses here into Garnet Crossing. But honestly, I think we might need some like row house density up here, maybe even a bit of medium density. So we're gonna try and see how this looks. Obviously, there's a bit of elevation here to be mindful of. So if I go for a 3x4, a 2x3, a 2x5, and maybe a 3x3 in medium density, and then we sprinkle in row house density for the rest here. Whoop. And maybe we're gonna do the same up here. So we'll do a 2x2 in this corner, and then I'm gonna kind of break that up with a bit of a low density commercial as well. And let's see, we'll have a bit of low density commercial here. Maybe I should even get in 1 or 2 buildings here alongside Meadow Lane. And then we can go for row housing. All of this actually. At least until about this point, then we'll start having the row housing kind of transition into a low density. And the cool thing here is that there's a bit of a distance between these houses where I haven't zoned, which was just to enable me to place more trees basically. But this allows me to zone a bit of row housing in between, kind of up the density of this area a little bit. And maybe that's fine. Actually, Aspen Street should probably there's a lot of duplication here. So let's just go for row housing here at least. And maybe this one as well. Do I remember what I zoned here? These 4, I think. And I'll have to remove all the houses here as well. Because since I am playing with Plop the Growables, one of the features of that mod I can enable is that buildings don't need to be placed within their correct zone to work. But as a consequence of this option, it's not going to work to just rezone an area. You have to manually remove the existing buildings for new stuff to grow. Also, we're going to implement the suggestion in this 11-month-old comment to rename Barlow Springs to Fenway Hill. Yeah, so if you've got an old suggestion, maybe it'll get picked up. While we're hanging out here in West Point, I kind of feel like adding some good old classic American sprawl to the city. I don't expect that to really alleviate much of the homelessness issue, but if anything, it's gonna bring in new people by adding new property to the market when we do hit play. And as we established in the previous episode, we're not going to be able to accommodate 8,000 homeless people anyways. So we're probably gonna take a big population loss, and then we'll just make sure to rebound as strongly as possible. So there's a bit of an area out here, which I think would be a good location for some sprawl. We just need a bit of infrastructure out here first. So let's go ahead and grab, let's see. I think I'm going to grab one of my, maybe this two-way national road. We're gonna enable contour lines because it's pretty crazy here as far as the hills go. Probably gonna enable the constant slope as well. And then we're just going to, let's see, what are we gonna do here? I think we're just gonna branch out with a straight segment, and then we'll switch to the continuous tool, and then we'll disable snapping and see if we can make our way down the hill here without anything too crazy as far as elevation changes go. And then we'll cross underneath here. And we've got another hill in our way. So we'll just do a quick turn so that we can kind of ride the edge of this hillside. Very little as far as elevation changes go. Enable snapping, just get a straight segment here. Get some Murica segments in place. We probably need to buy... man, no, it would... Actually, let's just do it. We've got the money. All right, I'll continue this a little further inlands here. To right up around there, and then we need the actual suburban streets. And I'm thinking we're gonna grab the alleys, but with parking on either side. The aptly named suburban alley I have created. And I'm probably gonna mess up the snapping options as always, although in the most recent video, or the one before that, it actually led to a bit of discussion on how to actually enable the proper options to get perfect 90-degree snapping. But it's not as important for this build, I think, because I do want some curvy roads and some cul-de-sacs for that proper suburban feel. And let's see how this is looking. We'll do a complex curve just to get up the hill here. And actually I'm gonna disable the constant slope here. Then we're just gonna move straight to get a cul-de-sac real close to the rail yard. Not ideal, unless you're a train guy, then pretty ideal actually. And maybe we just need a cul-de-sac here as well. Roosevelt has now been all zoned up, and I just went for the regular North American low density housing theme. I may switch some of the quote-unquote waterfront lots here out for the waterfront housing theme, but they can kind of stick out a bit like I saw from, so I'm just gonna try the vanilla theme for starters. And now I just gotta make sure that the services here in West Point will provide adequate coverage to Roosevelt, otherwise they're not gonna have a great time. Let's see, I don't think the police station is actually, no, I just think it's just medical coverage and the garbage collection services here in West Point that are district specific. The police station here in downtown West Point actually serves the entire East Haven County. So I think that's it. What am I saying? We can't be finished with Roosevelt without placing a school down, because we do have a slight deficit in elementary school capacity, so it doesn't really make sense for this to go missing. I'll add in a few extensions as well. Can I squeeze one more in there? I can. And then a good old parking lot to reduce the amount of available housing even further. We'll just grab this lot here, and I think I'm getting rid of some of the fences and these structures here. They seem a little bit obsessive for a school at least. And I'll just deselect all the zoning here. And I think that's about it. Maybe add in a few of these bigger trees. And guys, I think that is it for the amount of housing we'll be adding while the game is paused, because I kind of want to get a move on now, and we're gonna see a massive population drop even with all this additional housing, but we should just push on by now and kind of let things resettle and see where we actually end up. So I'm going to just start the simulation now, full throttle, and then we're gonna monitor and see what happens. And I'll get back to you guys when things have sort of settled. And of course, we'll keep our homeless monitor auto-refreshing as well. So we saw an immediate drop of around 600 homeless people. So they have been resettled, quote unquote, into some of all the new low-density housing, low-rent housing we've been building. But we should see a massive population drop yet starting now. The apocalypse has begun again. So I'll give it a few minutes and then I'll get back to you. Okay, so this has turned out to be quite a surprise. About a month and a half of in-game time has now passed, and our population is approaching 61,000, which is even more than what we started out with at the beginning of the most recent episode. And this is despite the fact that our homeless population has now dropped to 980. And it's been hovering around 1,000 for a while, so I don't think that's going to reduce any further, not in dramatic shifts at least. But this is all very positive. Furthermore, if we check unemployment, we're sitting at around 2%, and we still have almost 1,400 open positions. Something that likely helped reduce the amount of homeless people, besides actually building housing for them.
Message!
Who would have thought, was to reduce the price of this train line here that takes people all the way to Boston. So essentially moving out of the county to zero, making the ticket price free and assigning as many vehicles as possible. But then again, I need to build more housing. I mean, with this unemployment figure and still jobs in reserve, we need even more housing. So I guess it's a good thing that in the most recent vote, voting on the future of the remainder of this inner city block here, you guys decided that we're indeed going to build some more housing, more specifically a mixed-use medium-density complex using the urban promenades buildings. So we've cleared the block from all the trees, decals, and even the well-manicured grass, and it's about ready for new development. But we have to ask ourselves a few questions before we dive into this modern redevelopment. One being, what about the parking minimums and the overall density of this development? And to kind of answer those questions, I think the best way to do that is just look at the context of the city that we're building this in. So generally speaking, Fort John is a very dense place, and as we've discussed in prior episodes, especially when developing the downtown, there really isn't a lot of space dedicated to parking, especially not surface parking, because it's a highly walkable environment. Transportation is sort of iffy. We gotta work on that in future episodes, but it's very walkable. And generally, it's a pretty bustling city, and as we've already established, it has an abundance of high-paying, high-tech manufacturing jobs as well. So I think with that in mind, the Fort John City Council can be pretty strict in the approval process. I imagine that for a lot of this size, the investors would be flocking to propose plans for redevelopments because there's probably lots of money to be made here. So with that said, I think we're going to have a bit of parking, and I'm kind of tempted to use the new small parking building with 2 levels that we just got from the Detailers 2 patch, because every other option seems to be a little too massive for the general area, and this one isn't actually too bad. Now I gotta be a little careful with the placement here, because I want it to look well integrated with the modern development, and that's gonna be a tough one. So I think if we start by maybe placing it, let's see, if we place it 2 tiles away from the high school around here, then I might be able to fit in a very, very small pedestrian path here and a row of buildings. Actually, this is all wrong. The parking lot shouldn't be facing Oak Avenue. I think it should face one of the side streets. So scratch that, we're relocating it and actually just moving it very, very close here to the high school instead. And there's a lot of noise currently in game due to a medical helicopter flying above our heads. I hope it's not too bad for you guys. But this should allow me to align it pretty close to the high school. Yoink. That works fairly well, honestly. Now I probably need at least one road to kind of cut through this block and kind of separate it a little bit. That is obviously going to take away a bit of buildable space, but I mean, it's going to make it all the more interesting, I think. So I think we're going to use the new small pedestrian street. I think it would be a good fit to not really have a dedicated vehicle road in this area. So if we move up to about here, or maybe right here actually, and we just cut through, then hopefully I can fit in a small corner building here, so that we don't have any weird ugly angles of the parking lot sticking out. And while the urban development clearly won the vote, there are almost 3,000 votes for the green space with hospital access. So I'm actually going to kind of deprioritize democracy a little bit, just a tiny bit, and highlight this comment suggesting that we might still have a bit of space for green space, maybe even some hospital access. And I just think that sounds very, very interesting. So I hope all those of you that voted for the urban development will be okay with me just reserving a tiny triangle down here for a bit of green space, but more importantly, a pedestrian pathway, a bridge actually directly to the hospital, so that you can cross the usually pretty busy Oak Avenue in an easy, non-stressful manner. So to just kind of outline what I mean, I pretty much just want to reserve like a very small area, something like this, honestly. Might cut a little into this place as well, so we could do something like... Actually, we'll use invisible paths and surfaces if that's the direction we want to go in. But we need a pedestrian bridge to kind of cross here on Arch. Because this covered pedestrian bridge, I mean, it's not my favorite look. We'll just try this. And I think we'll drop it to 7.5 meters. That should be enough clearance for any type of traffic we're expecting here in Oak Avenue. And we're just gonna start out with the covered pedestrian bridge. We can always divert away from that if it doesn't fit our desired look. But I'm just gonna bring that into the hospital with Anarchy enabled. So a little disclaimer: be careful with this, because you might mess up some pathing and other good stuff. If you do what I'm doing right now, but I'm confident that we can fix it if we mess something up. So let's just get this placed, and then while I'm still connected here, I'm just gonna switch to the regular pedestrian path. Then I'm gonna click this show marker here. It's gonna show the existing pedestrian and vehicle lanes pretty much within the building, and then we're just gonna drop this to 0. And I'm going to connect it up to this path here. So I'm not really sure if and how much usage this elevated pedestrian bridge here is going to be seeing, but it's there now, and it at the very least looks interesting. I do wonder though if I can actually get an additional pillar in place by like double clicking somewhere. I probably need snapping enabled. So can I double click? No, Oh man, that looks... That's a bit of a weird look. I guess I could add a custom pillar if I wanted. Anyways, pavement path, 7.5, connect to this one, and then I think we're actually just gonna go for a super simple continuous road here, and we're just gonna go all the way down because this is essentially stairs. So 37 percentage, I don't think that's too bad when we consider this to be stairs. Yeah, not very wheelchair friendly, which is I guess a bit of an oversight. Yeah, okay, so these Japanese region pack door props or gate props, not perfect. I just kind of wanted some texture there on the wall to, at least from afar, look like there's like an actual entrance. And with that configuration, I also just dropped the general height of the pathway because I still think there's plenty of clearance, which means that this ramp here or the stairs here is much less dramatic in elevation. We're gonna hold off with any detailing and get the housing development in place first. So let's use Find It to filter for buildings. And with the filters menu here, we are going to select the Urban Promenades pack, this one, yank. And then we'll expand the panel view here. And then I'm gonna use the corner types here to find the corners I need. So if we filter for right corner buildings, then I kind of want some separate structures that aren't too different from each other. So for instance, if I grab, let's see, if we grab this corner as an example, and I think we are because I really like this aesthetic, then there's going to be a right cornered version and there's going to be a left cornered version. And there's not necessarily going to be a straight segment with the exact same design. But I have a bit of an idea of how we might be able to get around that if we want to create a building that has a completely same design. So I kind of want to try and use these corner buildings here to create one massive structure here, or one single development rather. So it's going to be a real trial and error process. I'm going to place a 1 right there. Then we are going to grab the other version of it. And we're gonna flip that, make sure that it's somewhat aligned. And then we're going to align it to this corner here. Actually, we should probably do something like this and then stitch them close together. Now it's gonna look a little odd here, but I do have some ideas. So just stick with me here for just a second as I place a few more of these. Can this one fit on this corner as well? It can, but just for good measure, I'm gonna grab the other version just in case there are any differences between them. And this one is fairly easy to kind of just stitch together alongside the pedestrian road here. Probably leave a bit of open space. So we'll do something like that. And then it's gonna be tricky to see if I can actually squeeze one more building in here without causing any pathing issues. So any warnings or stuff like that, but we're gonna give it a go. And I couldn't. I'm gonna see if I can, let's see if I can move this one to remove any issues. It seems like I can. And that also adds a bit of an interesting design here in the corner. So I'm gonna try and move this back a little to maybe around here. That looks pretty nice. It's almost aligned up here, but not quite. So I'm gonna grab this building and we're gonna see if we can do another squeeze. Let's see if I can make some sense of this. And I actually think that looks quite all right. Can we do the same over here? If I flip it in this direction and I just try and align it. Oh, this is, things are getting fairly tricky now. But actually, if I can just kind of, oh, come on. Come on, game. Work with me here. I mean, I guess that sort of works, but then again, it doesn't really. It does look a little odd. Maybe if I drop the height a little. Something like this. That actually, I think that's actually all right. Now, if I want even more customization options, I've actually grabbed the static ploppable version of this pack here, and that should make it a little easier to fill in some of the gaps, because I don't really want a courtyard back here. I mean, it's too small anyway to be of any use. So what I can do is I can grab mixed residential, I can filter for the urban promenades, and I should be able to fairly easily find the corner building we have been using, and I think, yeah, it's this one. And these are prop versions of these assets that aren't terrain conforming either. So these give us a ton of flexibility to kind of create the exact design we want, if we want to create a more adventurous design. So for instance, if we want the corner lot here to be a little more interesting and having some living room windows kind of poke through, we can do just that. And we could place a version in here as well. So I'm just gonna select this, and then I think something I need to kind of check is whether I would like to have some of these be elevated. So I'm just gonna pause before I mess anything up. So I have one version here, and if I move it and grab this prop here, we could add a few extensions to this whole development and just make it a little more grand in nature. We did just discuss the environment, like the housing environment that this is being built in, as being a highly competitive one with a very, very desirable city. So I'm just gonna try and see if I can add in an additional layer to this whole thing. I know I didn't want to detail yet, but just imagining a few like patios, I think that's how you pronounce it at least, up here would just be, I think that would be very fitting that the rooftop here, since this is now a two-tiered building, would be fairly accessible to the residents. I think I might even be able to use this one to create like a larger segment. Which, yeah, it's gonna require some recoloring and a bit of move it configuration. But if we just move this up so that we've got no roof lines poking through. Okay, they're all the same height. So I'm just gonna drop this a tiny bit so that there's no ugly clipping. And then can I recolor these? It seems I can. I think I'm just gonna grab this color scheme here. That looks the nicest. It's a very, very simple little thing to do, but I kind of think it works. Now, something that's gonna tie this building together is grabbing a color scheme and making that go through the entire development. And while I do enjoy the colorfulness of the urban promenades buildings, I think realistically one of the more muted versions, probably this white and dark version, is probably what a developer that want to make sure they don't offend anyone with any colorful business would probably be going for. Alternatively, we could do it as like a two-tiered building where the top floors are blue and these are white. Actually, let's just go for this super sterile look. Oh yeah, that's big business for you. And you just know that developers would call this building something ridiculous and describe it as, let's see, luxury living in Sodo Photo, south of downtown Fort John. Oh yeah, so nice. You can always add even more props to an area like this to detail it up, or alternatively, if you want to kind of cover up some of the very green roof tiles we have here in the urban promenades buildings, there are many possibilities of just getting some props added. You know, you could maybe do a pillar of some sort, which you can then lower and add in some air condition facilities up here, stuff like that. Or adding in a small rooftop access and solar panels, air conditioning facilities, stuff like that. Let's see if we have some AC stuff we could add. We do. Cool, I'll just add 2 of these and 1 of these. And that's it. Let's get back into the second development on this open lot here. And I think this small tight area next to the small parking building kind of helps dictate the type of development we can build here, or at least the sizes of the buildings, because we probably can't go much beyond 2x2. So that obviously makes filtering here a little easier. So let's just grab we'll grab a corner building just to kind of start off with. Just gonna freeform it and just get that place. Let's see, does any of the corners actually match? Okay, so this, let's see, do they actually match any of the non-corner versions? I don't really know, but I think we can place one of these, and then depending, oh, it actually aligns perfectly, so we may just be able to place one more right next to it. And I don't want it to kind of clip too much into the parking garage, but I guess this is all right. We can make that even better by just making it a little tighter alongside the pedestrian street. And then for the building here, we once again, can't go much deeper than 2 tiles due to the parking structure. So I'm gonna see if I can grab this one and get a third alignment in place. Although it would surprise me, actually that aligned all right. And then we can jump up in size to get something a little different placed here. Something with a bit of a more interesting design. And I don't mind there to be like an open path here, so like a little walkable promenade. Leading into the parking facility. And I think this building even comes in different sizes. Isn't there like a taller version? I guess there isn't. I'll see if I can get this aligned. That's gonna be a little tricky on this corner here. And then a third version, which is going to be, let's see, this one here, due to the alignment. And with the prop versions, I might just be able to make this look a whole lot better, actually. If I place a couple of these and I just align them perfectly and then I lower them. Let's see, aligning perfectly, that's easier said than done apparently. Just like that, and then I grab both of them and we just lower them down so that they don't clip into the other ones. Then, or maybe I want, no, actually, no clipping allowed. So we'll just go for something like this. It looks better than just having the 2 blank white walls at least. And I can do something similar over here, I think. As for the color, let's be a little adventurous. Ooh, and just continue on the red color scheme here. Now these have a very boring gray, so I think I like this slightly brown version instead. Just gonna grab that. Yeah, that looks all right. Make sure everything is colored, and there you have it. And it seems like the area is really already quite a bustling place, but it makes sense. That is exactly what mixed-use development can offer. You know, nice amenities, cafes, sidewalk stuff, and I kind of like this little inlet here with a few additional cafes as well. One change I think I'm going to make is I don't want this crossing here, so let's just get rid of the crosswalks, get rid of the traffic lights. We're gonna disallow left turn here. That's easy because that's a one-way, so it's more disallowing this left turn, and that's gonna result in traffic being able to freely flow through Oak Avenue. As for the small green space here, we're keeping things really simple. So I'm just gonna spam a bunch of these flower bushes. As you can probably see, there's a ton of activity going on here near the Fort John General Hospital, but then again, the entry access points for the hospitals aren't fantastic. But we are seeing a bit of a diff wave, so it's kind of their worst peak hours currently. And as a result of this diff wave, we have this facility full notification, which it might be the first time I've ever seen that in game actually. I think there is an easy fix to this, or somewhat easy at least, and that's just kind of expanding the, what's this called? The Fort John Central Cemetery. That's fairly easy. I'm just gonna grab this custom old cemetery from the PDX mods site and just kind of align and place that right there, and we'll grab the better Bulldozer mod and get rid of this odd little texture thingy, and I'll get rid of the fencing as well so that it's kind of integrated with the existing pathways we have here in Cemetery Hill. And I think I'm also going to remove some of these trees that just kind of have a color scheme that I don't really fit all that well. So this addition should add an additional 4 hearses as well as 600 additional capacity. It's a little odd that the tooltip is telling me that the building needs to be emptied, because I don't think you can empty cemeteries, and I don't just mean this custom version. The regular cemetery can't be emptied either, I think. Yeah, so that's a little lazy, I guess, on their part. Also, for one improvement, it would be really cool if you could build cemeteries where you kind of just draw out a district tool, just like when you create farming areas in the game. And then the district that you draw out would be automatically filled in with some graves and maybe even some pathways, but might be wishful thinking, but I think that could be a really cool feature. So we're not going to do any more detailing of this area just yet, because we haven't detailed up downtown Fort John yet, and depending on the types of services and props we'll be using in here, we're probably going to use a different set for this more modern development. And I kind of want to finish the episode on highlighting this comment requesting a few more service buildings, especially in some of the more rural or out of the city center areas. And this is a pretty good opportunity to get some good stuff built out here in Cape Autumn. Because if we have a look at the general service coverage, there's like a general theme here. For healthcare and death care, Cape Autumn doesn't have a dedicated service. Fire station, that's the very same thing. Every other populated center has a fire station, but not Cape Autumn. Now, mind you, there's like 500 residents out here, but I do plan to change this up in the future and probably make it a little more suburban and a little less rural as it currently is. So this is a pretty good opportunity for us to add at least a medical clinic and a small fire station. For now, it probably makes the most sense to situate these within the general area of the town of Autumn, because despite only having 190 residents, it is by far the most densely populated area and the only actual designated town out here. Fortunately, with all the region packs, the free updates, and the 2 new DLCs, we are absolutely spoiled for choice when it comes to building new service buildings. So it's more a matter of what you actually want to use than having to just use a single thing. So with the intention of adding much more suburban sprawl to Cape Autumn in the maybe near future, I don't want to think too small right from the get-go, so I think I'm actually going to grab this modern medical clinic from the modern architecture patch, and we are going to yeet these people out of here and just trying to get it placed aligned on this corner lot here. Now it looks fairly nice, actually it looks really nice right from the get-go, but if I'm trying to really please my viewers, then as a comment to the comment, or a reply rather to the comment I just highlighted, there was this comment from a fellow emergency service nerd to hear if you could like add custom ambulance shelters or garages. I think that should be possible. We're gonna give it a go at least. And specifically, this medical clinic doesn't have any garages for ambulances. It comes with 5 vehicles, but I guess they're just parked outside. So we're gonna try and make this a little more custom. So I am gonna do some terraforming just to have a bit of an easier time working with this. get rid of a couple of these trees here, and then we are going to open the static ploppable service buildings menu, which is another mod I grabbed. And then if we move into healthcare and deathcare, this seems to be a complete collection of all these sub-buildings you can add as upgrades to buildings within this category. And more specifically, there actually is a medical clinic ambulance depot. So this is the upgrade you can add to the vanilla medical clinic. But in our cases, I mean, I guess we can just use it as a, an actual ambulance depot for the vehicles. At least we can, make it look like that. It's not gonna be functional, unfortunately, but I mean, that's just how it is, right? So if we just start by placing it here and we cheat with a bit more terraforming, then I hope I don't mess anything up, but I kind of wanna, okay, I guess I won't be removing that parking lot, but I'll certainly be expanding on this road here this surface, because we do need a road to stretch all the way down here. So let's just try this. We'll see how this works. I guess that looks fairly alright. Let's see if we can grab an American themed America ambulance. We have one right here. So I wouldn't mind having maybe one just kind of parked out front. Is probably not too good, but maybe we could have one or two parked in here actually. We'll have one parked there, and then maybe have a car or two parked back here as well. Something like that. A bit of detailing, a few decals perhaps, some of these large stained ones. Just adding a couple of these should help. And then some trees. And we'll call this, I think we'll just call this Autumn Hospital. You can probably tell I'm no emergency service expert myself, but I hope I was able to please some of you ES nerds out there just a little bit. Let's move on to the fire station. This time we're gonna think a little smaller and just grab the small community firehouse from the modern architectures pack. And we'll have to yeet a few people out as well, but it's no big deal. And hopefully this alignment will look all right. Although I kinda, any good expansions? I mean, I guess this adds a little more interest to it, so I'm just gonna add that. And to really wrap up, we're gonna do a tiny bit of expansion to the actual town of Autumn now that we have some service providers out here. Really nothing major, but it's such a small town to start with that, any addition is going to make a pretty cool difference in how it looks. So I'm just gonna upgrade the national road to a zonable regular road, and I think I'm just gonna add a few additional of these suburban style alleyways. Yeah, something like that. That should give us plenty of space for some additional zoning here. And I don't mind continuing the theme of having a bit of distance in between some of the houses. It's gonna make it easier to make it kind of leafy and green with the tree coverage. But it's also just gonna provide that low density look that I still kind of like out here. This is where you move if you want to kind of escape the hustle and bustle of some of the bigger cities of the county. Or if you can't afford the bigger cities, they would probably price you out anyways. with these new housing additions and a little modification to the Town of Autumn's district boundaries, we're sitting at 330 people, wow. And there's even been room for a little simple park with some chemically treated grass. It's very, very green at least. And that's gonna be a wrap for this episode, guys, as we're approaching 64,000 people in the city and a labor market that is more healthy than ever. With a sub 2% unemployment rate, I think we're really ending this on a high note. And as always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, for all the feedback and support. So many of your suggestions are making their ways into my cities, which honestly makes it easier for me as well. I kind of feel that I can brainstorm with all of you sometimes, so keep it up. I really enjoy having this sort of interaction. Speaking of interaction, some of you have been asking for my custom, quote-unquote custom zoning themes, and I'm really not confident sharing these everywhere online because I've just kind of hacked these together without following official guidelines. So if you want to use these at your own risk, they are now available to Patreon members, which you can access for $1 petrol dollar a month if you so please. Currently, the EU old residential low theme, so these are the historic EU themed houses I made, is available, but I also plan to make the low density industrial warehouse theme. So this is basically just industry without smokestacks and mainly just warehouse looking buildings. I plan to make that available sometime in the future as well. I just need to add a proper custom thumbnail and description. You can head over to Patreon if you're interested in that. Otherwise, there's also sometimes early access to episodes and other sneak peeks and stuff like that. I'll leave you guys with some final cinematics. I hope you all had a very safe entry into 2025, and I can't wait to share some of my upcoming plans with you. Thank you so much for watching once again. See you in the next one. Goodbye.